guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to share with you my March wrap-up. I have quite a few books because I did do an awesome readathon this particular month, and that was to do middle grade March. So the entire month of March you were trying to focus on a bunch of middle grade reads, and of course there were challenges. So I will talk about a lot of those challenges throughout this wrap-up, but without further ado, let's just get into it. The first book that I finished in the month of March is a middle grade fantasy / magical realism. I guess it's more of a fantasy book, and that is Lost and Found, the second book in the Witherwood Reform School by Obert Sky. I gave this 3 stars. I'm rating it G. It was pretty good. During the first book that I read several months ago, I had so many questions at the end of that book that I was really hoping would be answered in this second one. They really weren't. If anything, it added just more questions than it did answers. And I was under the assumption that this was a duology because I tried my hardest to look for a third book or when a third book was going to be coming out, and there is nothing. It's like crickets. I don't even know if there's going to be a third one. There's no talk. This book was published, this particular one, 3 years ago. So I don't know. There's gotta be a third one. There's no talk about it though. But this left on the craziest cliffhanger that's like, I need to know more. So anyways, just to kind of give you a rundown a little bit about this book, it is about a brother and sister that are stuck in this crazy, magical, evil school, and all the kids are brainwashed. There's lots of secret passageways, crazy creatures, these magical creatures that are like stealing children. And so just lots of chaos and mayhem ensues with this brother and sister that are technically just trying to get out of this school and escape, but as well as just saving other children on top of that. But seriously, I have so many questions that need to be answered, and nothing really got answered. It was just like more fantastical elements and things got thrown in here, and it's pretty good. I'm still giving it just like a 3 star, maybe a 3.5 star. And what's crazy about the first and second book, I'm getting a ton of the Lemony Snicket series of Unfortunate Event vibes in these books, like Flashback City to Unfortunate series, like crazy. But I'm hoping the third book comes out because I have to know what happens. I have to know. Anyways, for middle grade March, this covered the challenge of a fantasy book. Ooh, super shiny. So the next book that I finished in the month of March is, of course, another middle grade. This is a fantasy novel. This is the 4th book in the Septimus Heap series called Quest by Angie Sage, and 3 stars, maybe 3.5. I love diving back into all the characters, just the family essence of just brothers and sisters and just how close they are. Just all the magical things of potions and dragons and adventures. I love it. I'll say this over and over again. Total Harry Potter vibes in these, but of course, all different characters, all different land, all different fantastical wizarding elements and whatnot. This is the adventure of Septimus and his little sister. They take to go look for their older brother who has been missing in a different time, and he's stuck in a different time. I'm really liking the adventures and stuff, and you did get to see a lot more family elements in this one than you have in previous ones. So a lot of Septimus's older brothers have just kind of left the roost over the last, several books, and they live in a forest and you never hear about them, but you do get to revisit them in this one and in their forest and in their elements, and I really liked diving into that. But there were a few things that just didn't add up for me. Things that didn't make sense that maybe will be explained in the next book. I'm hoping. I am going to keep continuing on with the series. I am enjoying it. I am liking this. But this one was just okay. It was a fun adventure and whatnot. And so, anyways, for middle grade March, this one does cover fantasy again. The next book that I finished in the month of March is The Boy on the Wooden Box by Novelization. This is a middle grade nonfiction memoir of a young Jewish boy, of course, during like the Holocaust and Nazis, and it's just so good. Like, it is so heart-wrenching to hear his story, but it's like a story of just all the other Jewish kids that you've heard, but of course his has a little bit more depth in it. It is his story. It's a memoir. He did not release this or write it till he was much, much older. I think he was probably 70 years old, and before the book was even really released, he had passed away. So some people did finish it for him just because as he had gotten older, in his old age, he felt more comfortable about telling his story. And so he actually went around the world and talked about his story. And then of course it was put into a book. I really enjoyed this for middle grade March. This is going to cover a book that is either nonfiction or based on real events. And of course, that's what this is. Oh gosh, just his story was, I was enamored the entire time. I finished this entire book in one day. I can't remember last time I actually sat and read a book in one day. So good. And what's even cooler about his memoir, he talks a lot about Oskar Schindler, which if you've ever heard of Schindler's List, he is a German man he is a Nazi, but he, under the Nazis' noses, had not only saved Leon, and that's what mostly this book is to kind of show you that side of Schindler, but he saved thousands of Jews, and you got to see it from his point of view as a young boy being with Oskar Schindler, and I really, really enjoyed it. If you have a middle school kid or a high schooler, I highly, highly suggest you get them to read this. Amazing, 5 stars. The next book that I finished in the month of March is The Indian in the Cupboard by Lynn Reed Banks. I gave this 3 stars. This is a reread for me, so if you've been following me, you'll know for the entire year of 2019, I want to try at least rereading 1 book a month. And so I did read this back when I was a kid. I loved it, but as an adult, you look at things a little bit differently, and I didn't like it as much as I remember as a kid. One, his best friend in this, oh my gosh, I wanted to like reach through the book and punch that kid's lights out, and then also slap Omri, who is the main character in this. I just wanted to slap him across the face and be like, oh my gosh, get rid of your friend. He is bad news. And then to just, ugh, I don't know. And I don't remember having that big of an issue as a kid while reading this with him, but oh my gosh, as an adult, I just wanted to slap the kid silly. But maybe that's just because my mom bear claws are coming out and it was just, Anyways, so this for middle grade March covers a non-human character as a main character, and there are 2 main characters. So you have Omri, who is the human boy who has a skeleton key from his grandmother, and he puts this toy plastic Indian that he gets for his birthday in this cupboard, and the next time he unlocks the cupboard, the Indian is alive. So of course Little Bear, the Indian, is also another main character, and he's definitely non-human to begin with because he's a plastic toy like action figure. And then of course he does turn human, but he's still like 2 inches tall. So it was good. I can see why they still read these in like reading courses through like middle school or like 5th and 6th grade. It's definitely PG. There is a little bit of violence in it. And it's definitely a book that was written, you can tell, several years ago because of the way it portrays cowboys and Indians and firewater and all of that. So I could see how some people would think this is a racist type of book, but for its time and what it's explaining as like these toy figures, and they're set in their time frames of like the 1800s, I don't find it racist at all. I just find it with its time frame and how they talked, how the Indians talked when they would try to talk in English. how cowboys and Indians viewed themselves. And so it is a very kind of coming of age story as well for the main character Omri. He has a lot of growing up to do. I do like that aspect, so I'm thinking 3.5 stars. The next book that I read is actually a book that is just strictly through like Audible, and it is Beauty and the Beast Novelization. So it is a audiobook that was short and sweet. Of course, it is the fairy tale fantasy middle grade telling of Beauty and the Beast. But instead of the actual classic version that was written back in like 1700s, it is just an exact retelling of the Beauty and the Beast Disney movie, which is funny because I used to watch it a ton when I was a kid. I loved Beauty and the Beast. And then of course also the newest version that came out with Emma Watson, I loved it. It's adorable. So while listening to this, you get to just play the movie in your head, but of course it tells it in a way of story form. So you're getting a lot more thoughts and feelings than just visual. And I really like that. It was just a thing down memory lane for me. It was cute, it was whimsical, 4 stars, rated G, what's not to like? Oh, and I forgot to mention, on The Indian in the Cupboard, not only is it a challenge for middle grade March that covers a non-human character, but also too, one of the other challenges for middle grade March is to read a diverse read. And of course I would consider that kind of diverse because it does have Indians and cowboys, and so that's definitely diverse for me because I'm not an Indian or a cowboy. The next book that I finished is City of Ghosts by Victoria Schwab. I have heard a ton about this through BookTube probably over the last like 6 months or so. I picked this up at my kids' last Scholastic Book Fair, and I couldn't wait to get into this. My 7th grader right now is reading it, but of course I got hooked into it so fast I read it faster than him. I literally read this like in 2 days. It was so good. It is a middle grade paranormal fantasy book about a girl who has a near-death experience, and then ever since then she can see ghosts, and she feels like this tug or a pull whenever one is kind of around. And so it's kind of a coming of age story as well for her, just trying to grow into her new like senses and trying to figure out what she's supposed to do with these ghosts, as well as she has to follow her parents all the way to Scotland because they're doing like a documentary, and so she follows her parents to Scotland. And of course, if anyone knows, Scotland is known for being kind of a haunted, dark place in a sense. But don't get me wrong, I am obsessed with ghosts and paranormal stuff. So my like bucket list of places to go is Scotland. Oh my gosh. If I could go there and just spend like 2 weeks, I'd be freaking in heaven. I would visit every cemetery, every crazy castle, every dark corner of Scotland you can think of. I would do it in a heartbeat. No problems there. So of course for middle grade March, this covers a book that is fantasy. So I'm covering lots of stuff here. I am rating it PG. I'm giving it 4 stars. I loved the dark Scottish vibes that was throughout it, and the cemeteries and the castles and the underground tunnels and you name it. And then of course, you know, ghosts. I loved it. And it wasn't scary for me. I'm a grown-up, so it didn't scare me, but I could totally see as a younger kid being kind of creeped out by some of the elements in here. I think if I was a kid reading this, I would have been floored. It would have been the best book ever. I can totally see this particular book actually being turned into a very big series with lots of mysteries and adventures. I can see several books coming out following this main character and her adventures and craziness and ghost stories and stuff. I can't wait, because if Victoria Schwab comes out with any more books in this, I'm all over it. Bring it on. Okay, so this is my last middle grade for the month of March, but actually I didn't get to finish it in March. I got so close. I have like maybe 50 pages left, 70. I was really hoping to finish it for the month of March, but I'm not going to give you my full review on this until the end of April, of course. But this was also a diverse read for me, as well as a book that is set with it's not nonfiction, but it's got like true events. So it's a middle grade historical fiction with like real elements in it. So this has actually 3 stories in it, and they each chapter it flips to the next one. So for every 3 you're getting like the same person. So there's 3 children in here that it's telling stories from. One is a Syrian boy who is trying to escape from Syria and get to Germany during 2015, which everyone knows what's going on with ISIS and things like that during that time frame. The other story is a girl coming from Cuba during the 1990s, and they're trying to escape to America, of course, like to Miami, which I remember growing up in the 90s, and of course I wasn't anywhere near Florida or any of that southern region. I have always been in the Northwest, but I remember listening to the news, and I remember watching the news, and there was like these Cuban people on like inner tubes and things like that floating into Miami during that time frame. And so seeing that from a girl's point of view, who's, you know, a young girl, it's just, oh, it's so heartbreaking. And then the other one is, of course, a young Jewish boy during Nazi Germany and the Holocaust, and him and his family are trying to escape and actually go to Cuba from Germany. So some of these stories kind of intertwine, I'm starting to notice. My prediction for 5 stars, easy, rated PG, just for the topics and stuff like that. But other than that, we'll see how much I really like it at the end of April. And the last book that I finished in the month of March is Then She Was Gone by Lisa Jewell. And this is the only adult book that I read in the month of March, and it was the worst book out of all of them. 1 star. I know, crazy, right? I'm rating this R. So there is adult language, quite a bit. There is some violence, as well as some sexual and mature content in this one. So to give you the premises, this is about a mother who her teenage daughter goes missing. 10 years later, they give her some new news about her daughter that, you know, has been missing for 10 years. And within a very short time frame of finding out some new development in her daughter's disappearance, she meets a man in a coffee shop, and they start a romance. And what's crazy is his littlest girl, who is 10 years old, is a spitting image of her missing daughter. So it goes from there. The synopsis sounded great. I loved the idea about this. My son is going down. No, come back. Or it's behind a cloud. Come back. Anyways, the premise of this sounded amazing. It left nothing, like your imagination could run wild with this, right? And so I was so excited to get into this adult mystery thriller, but within the first few chapters, it gives away a huge plot point or a huge plot twist. And then from there, you could kind of guess exactly what was going to happen. Like, I could predict everything that would happen. My biggest thing is, if this author did not give away this big plot twist in the very beginning, it would have left a ton of mystery and what ifs throughout the entire book. And you would be like hanging on to every chapter going, what's going to happen next? But because a huge thing was given away at the very beginning, I was just like, well, there goes the mystery. It just ruined it for me. I don't know if I'm the only one that feels this way. It fell flat for me, and then once that happened and that was given away, it was just very predictable. And then some things that happened throughout the book made absolutely no sense to me. Like, it did not need to be in the book, especially a lot of things that even happened towards the end that I was just like, why? Why would that, some things just didn't even make sense. 1 star. Sorry, guys. All right, there you have it. That is my middle grade wrap-up / middle grade March wrap-up. I'm totally stoked because I technically got every challenge in for middle grade March. I read about 6.5, I'm counting refugee as half, 6.5 middle grade books in the month of March. The only challenge I did not finish for middle grade March was to read a book in verse, and I don't have any books in verse, and I don't have a desire to read any in verse. They're just not my cup of tea, so I didn't do that challenge. But I didn't freak out about it because I read so many other books that kind of like doubled up on my other challenges that I was totally happy with what I did. If you want to know a little bit more in depth about how I feel about these books, I do have a Goodreads website thing. I don't know what you call it. Anyways, my link will be down below. I'm also on Instagram, so if you want to stay connected with me there, I would love it too. Thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.